Cosmology. Turning now to cosmology, and reflecting upon what different cosmological systems we think we know about. Understanding what ideas of the universe and its construction have existed over time. Strictly speaking, a cosmology means a system that regards the universe as an ordered whole, formed on some definite plan. The word cosmos, which means order, was first applied to the universe by the Pythagorean school, from which all European science was derived. All esoteric teaching regarding the universe as ordered and formed on a definite plan. However, the word cosmos has come to mean simply any view of the universe, apart from an idea of order, or of origin. Since it is clear that we live in a universe, and that this Earth is some small part of it, many thinkers in the past have advanced different cosmological ideas which can roughly be divided into those that explain it as haphazard and accidental, and those that regard it as ordered and therefore intelligent. We may think that it makes no difference to a person whether they believe in one cosmological system or another, even if they seldom reflect upon the matter if at all, however we'd be wrong if we thought in this way. Anyone from the work point of view has different centers, different parts of centers and so on. They cannot be in higher parts of centers or higher centers, if they have wrong cosmological concepts governing their mind. We accept that this work can only begin with those who have magnetic center, with those who are convinced that there is something higher than themselves. Therefore, how can we expect to reach anything higher in ourselves if we do not believe that such a thing exists? So let's begin with a cosmological system taught in this work, which starts from the absolute, then descends in degrees or notes down to the most remote and smallest parts. Here we see clearly expressed the idea of a higher order, and again from this cosmological concept is derived the idea of higher and lower man, of conscious and mechanical mankind. This concept teaches that there is meaning beyond meaning, level beyond level, and it also teaches that everything starts from meaning. The whole universe in its great and small divisions is derived from ultimate meaning, and therefore from mind and intelligence. It also teaches that everything small and of a lower order is derived from something greater and higher up. From this comes the work idea that the whole scale of creation is seeking to grow, to ascend in order to reach something better than at present. So the work says that our moon, our little twig of the terrific cosmic tree, is seeking to grow, and to reach the state of the Earth, again that our Earth is seeking to become eventually a sun and so on. We have today the idea of evolution in both psychology and in science as Darwin formulated it, however the idea of evolution existed long before Darwin, and is as ancient as esoteric teaching itself. The idea stares out in every page of the New Testament, where it's explained that man is capable of undergoing an evolution, an ascent in the ray of creation. And recall the side octave from the sun, then Jacob's ladder as spoken of previously. Darwin saw evolution as part of mechanical selection, out of opportunistic variation that takes place over vast periods of time. He saw the idea of evolution, but only in a certain way and upside down as it were. He thought that a monkey somehow or other eventually became humanoid, a man. He could see no mind, no meaning, controlling the universe, and therefore it is not surprising that he complained of having lost his higher aesthetic tastes. We understand that we can always explain a thing by its smaller parts, can explain a house by its bricks for example, however we also know that the whole house existed in the architect's mind, long before it became manifest in time and space. We can explain a picture in terms of the mineral colors, but do you think that the tubes of paint make the picture or the mind of the artist? We can see an explanation of some organic whole, such as the human body, solely in terms of small constituent parts, but do not understand that a thing must be related in all of its parts, that they could not have arisen by chance. Because our mind is often shuttered to higher, meaning we explain the higher by the lower, which is of course erroneous. You can explain a motor vehicle by its nuts or bolts and so on, but not by the idea behind the motor vehicle that related all of its parts together. We can certainly argue that a motor vehicle could not exist without its different parts, or that an oil painting could not exist without its tubes of paint, but cannot assume to have the right explanation in thinking this way. If we think only in this manner from below upwards, then our mind remains shut to thinking from above downwards. As above, so below. The idea of a motor vehicle or motorized transportation preceded the construction of it. So can we then think that the idea is prior to its manifestation in visible terms, such as a motor vehicle that you can touch and handle, then jump into and drive off to run errands? Which comes first? Is mind first, or is mechanism as the vehicle of mind first? We know there has been a loss of meaning since the Reformation, which has made it possible for modern science to exist. An entirely new cosmological system was conceived when the Renaissance took place, which was more or less synchronous with the Reformation. This was certainly necessary and inevitable, as previously the cosmological concept was that at the head of all things stood God. This concept became, as it were, worn out and abused to such an extent that no one was allowed to think for themselves, and only the canon of Scripture was allowed. Then an entirely different cosmological concept came into popular use, where in the first place the Earth was no longer the center of the universe, and secondly the whole universe was seen under mechanical laws. It is often said that once it was proven that the Earth was not the center of the universe, a great revolution of thought took place. We could add to this, however, that a revolution in feeling did not take place, and we regrettably appear to be as vain as ever. Science is hesitant even now to admit that there is life anywhere in the universe save on this planet, and still ascribes to itself its own discoveries, not realizing that we are studying a given universe which transcends the human mind and its capacity. The task of the future is to reconcile the older and the newer standpoints. This is why the work says that one of its aims is to unite the wisdom of the East with the science of the West. Unless science discovers what is called religion, and unless religion discovers what is called science, the mind of man will be split into two irreconcilable sides, and would be led to believe that the whole world today suffers from schizophrenia. If our cosmological system, if we have one, is based upon the idea that there were somehow or other a lot of atoms derived in some manner from somewhere, which then condensed to form billions and billions of worlds and galaxies. That at some point life started, and then through remarkable coincidence there emerged different animals, trees, fishes, birds, men and women. Until gradually, little by little something eventually happens, but our mind is inadequately constructed with the requisite ideas and understanding to reach the higher parts of centers, even eventually develop higher centers themselves, which compose the very complex organism of humankind. We'd be looking down like cattle and incapable of looking up. Seeing an explanation of the most wonderful things like consciousness, thought, feeling, sensation, and so on through the tiny instruments that render them possible. We'd be boiling up the artist's picture and analyzing its chemistry. Then what happens is that we'd fall more and more under the dominance of matter, seeing in matter the explanation of everything, even life. The result being that internally we'd be more and more under the influence of machines, of programs, of code and formulas, of external organizations coming from outside of us. If we begin to think that there is not a single thing that can be studied in any branch of science that is a miracle, if we believe that the properties of matter cannot be solely explained in terms of matter, then something inside of us will have turned the other way and begun to lose sight of the true source of meaning itself. The definitions that Plato gave of the difference between someone glued to their senses and another of understanding state that the first believes that matter created mind, whereas the second believes that mind created matter. Which do we feel is prior in scale? Do we think that mind and consciousness arose accidentally out of some chance combination of atoms, whose origin we cannot explain, or do we think that mind created matter and all of its possibilities, that we live in an intelligent and ordered universe? It is on these two questions that the future of humanity rests. If we say there is nothing, then well and good. But if we say there is something, then well and much better. There is no quarrel with science itself, as science is obvious. Greece, the mother of Europe, laid down the formulations of science long before Christ was born. Then came the Christian teaching, and this modern 2000-year era of ours, the experiment upon man created as a self-developing organism. It seems that the idea was to unite the two aspects of truth, outer and inner. However, this idea has regrettably failed, although in the beginning Pythagoras taught both religion and science together, and in those times no one thought there was any contradiction between scientific facts and their gods. Every center has two sides, one turned towards the external senses and the literal meaning of everything, while the other side turns towards higher centers, which represent higher levels in the ray of creation. Balanced man must learn to use both sides, and to understand both, then bring them into relationship so there is no contradiction. If we exclude one in favor of the other, then we are undeveloped. There is no argument that the facts of science are perfectly correct, although fluctuating. It is the interpretations of science that are wrong.